Holy smokes, I knew I loved Doug from his car reviews, but I have to say, I wasn't expecting him to also be a real estate expert. At least the advice he gives in this podcast, which we're going to react to this section, provides 5 really good tips, not just on real estate, but also on finance. I'm going to break them down to you in a very simple noob versus pro style. We'll keep it easy, but let's get into this. Let's play the real estate portion of this, and then we're going to break out the critical lessons that most people get wrong when it comes to real estate, and I want you to avoid those mistakes because real estate is what I do for a living. Let's check it out.
Stradman sidebar here. Do you agree that
That's a Stradman sidebar, to make it clear.
His house isn't even done? Like, you watched the video where he went through his house.
So we visited him and we saw his house. The gorgeous house, but needs the backyard, needs the basement.
The basement's like it's
a lot of money. It's tough either way because if he finishes it, I don't think he's going to get back dollar to dollar what he spent.
Absolutely not.
But if he sells it unfinished, it makes the market so much smaller for whoever's willing to buy that house with an unfinished basement to spend more money.
This is the problem that I think a lot of these people run into is that they end up buying these. They get young people get money and they're like, oh, I want a palace with a moat, like a lazy river that goes around the whole thing. And they do all these things and realize those places are expensive to keep going. And often in order to get a place like that, you have to buy land so far away from where land is desirable that it makes it hard to justify putting that much money into the land, because at the end of the day, when you go to sell it, the buyer pool is really small. I go on Zillow and I see these like 25,000 square foot houses in the middle of nowhere, and it's just like, you're never
asking $4 million for it.
Like
$100 a square foot.
Right. And it's like your buyer pool is limited, and even at $4 million, like this is going to sell for 1.6 in 7 years. When you come to terms mentally with the fact that it's only worth 1.6,
it was tough with him because I remember talking to him before he was building the house, and his mindset at the time was, I just want like a 20-car garage, but I can't just build that because they won't permit it. So I have to build the house for resale value so that I have a structure that a family or someone else would want to buy. The thinking, I thought, was correct, but it's just...
It's snowballed a little. I have this severe belief, maybe militant, that you should live somewhere where your land is more valuable than the improvements you make to it. Like,
it's a very California thing to say.
Yeah, it is, or dense area to say, right? Like, that's also true in nice neighborhoods in a lot of cities. Like, I only ever buy old homes that are in kind of historic type neighborhoods that are very established long term, and
There is a lot to break down here. Let's get started with this just one at a time, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, first of all, this is already really great. It's like, how can I add to this? Well, I can add to this in a few ways. If you really want a high-value property with a lazy river, you could do it, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. Look at, for example, Ben Mala's listing. Ben Mala is listing a property off the coast of Clearwater, Florida. Absolutely gorgeous. I've been in this property before. I've stayed over the property. I've been in the lazy river. Gated home. Absolutely gorgeous 20,000 square foot property. And I think Ben Mala did this right because this particular property is in a location that people want to be in. It's right on the ocean. Yes, people are worried about hurricanes and it just flooding away one day. But one thing that Doug also mentions, which is really smart, and we'll talk about more of this in just a moment, but it's really expensive to keep these up. If you've ever watched a Ben Mala video, you see him complain about how much money he spends just on the utilities or pool cleaning, or after there's damage from a hurricane and all this gravel and the palm trees get washed away, how much it costs to fix it all or to get all the sand out of the pool in that very lazy river that he has, right? So yeah, if you want to pay it, it's going to be a pretty pricey ticket if you buy it in sort of a denser area. This is Florida, so it doesn't have to be California, right? But this is a very desirable part of Florida. Now, in fairness, if you go across the bridge, you could get homes for like $400,000. So it can change very rapidly. The same, mind you, is also true in Manhattan, and I'll show you about Manhattan in just a moment. But first, let's hit the first lesson. Everything in real estate starts with the first 3 rules. You probably have already heard about these, okay? The noob always forgets the first 3 rules. The noob says, I just want that 25,000 square feet of property, and then I'm gonna hyper customize it with that 20-car garage or whatever. Of course, you could argue business purposes for that, but always remember, ultimately, real estate is meant for people to live in, whether they're renting it or buying it. And the more you stray from what's normal, the harder it is to have what's called liquidity. Now, the pro understands this, and this is why the pro looks and says, hey, yeah, great idea. Want to have a 10,000 square foot home in Columbiana, Ohio for $3.5 million? Just an active listing here on Zillow I found. Looks gorgeous, got a tennis court, you got your own lake. I mean, you got a garage or side house here that looks bigger than the house that I live in. And the problem with this is, here you've got a person who's trying to sell it, but look how long they've been trying to sell it. 932 days. That's incredible. That's 2.5 years that they've been trying to sell this, and they just had a $559,000 price reduction. The problem is, this location is not in demand. How many people in a town of less than 7,000 people in Columbiana have $3.5 million to spend on this property? Spoiler, nobody. And so your buyer pool is like zero. Even Ben Mala, who is in a highly desirable area, is struggling to sell this $35 million property, even though it's in a great area. So location matters first, but that's not the only problem. Pros know this. Just to give you a second example on location, here is a Mount Vernon property, so you've got less than 20,000 people who live in this city. Also, gorgeous home. Place was built in 82, 23,000 square feet, multiple different structures, a lot of land, $2.5 million. Price cut $200,000, can't get it sold. Now, if I take that same money and I put it as a house for sale in Palo Alto, California, outside the tech district, it's gonna sell fast. Now, you might say, oh, but Kevin, I mean, look at all those icons there. Those are a lot of sales, right? Key point. These are a lot of sales. These are sold listings. If I go to active listings, I've got nearly nothing in that under $3 million price range. I got 4 homes to look for if I'm looking for a small home under 1,500 square feet. It just shows you that location is the number one thing that matters, because that introduces your buyer pool. The fact of the matter is, when you've got NVIDIA employees who are working, 20 minutes away, they can pay these prices because they're getting paid massively in stock comp for a company that's now worth $5 trillion, right? Anyway, so location, number one. We always seem to forget that though, because we balance our desire versus what's smart for liquidity. And see, that's what matters number two, and the pro understands this as well. If you struggle to sell a property because you're not in a high demand location, you're also going to struggle to rent out the property, and that kills your liquidity. Can't sell fast, can't rent fast. And the closer you are to jobs is where you maximize your liquidity. Always remember that. The value of the properties, no matter how old or how new they are, isn't driven by the size of the home or the pool. It's driven by the value of the dirt, because of the proximity of your ability to earn money. And if you can go pay a few $1,000s more per month for a home, but it means you're closer to a job that pays you an extra $10,000 a month, it's usually worth it. A great place you could see this, by the way, is look at Manhattan. So if I want a place in Manhattan, let's say I want let's go for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I've got a budget of, let's say $4 million, okay? So I got a $4 million budget. What can I get in lower Manhattan? I can get a 3 and 2 condo for $4 million. Or maybe I could go to like 1 Wall Street. I'm gonna get a little condo for $4 million, right? The more you go away from the jobs, the more rapidly the prices will decline. This is always normal, but it's a perfect example to show you what you know. Or what you should know, rather. See, if I go over here to Kingsbridge, a $1 million property will get me the same 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo I pay $4 million for on Wall Street. If I keep going further north, I could go to Bryn Mawr Park. Now I get a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, 1,800 square foot home for under $1 million in Yonkers. And now it's gonna take me an hour to get down to Manhattan, maybe 45 minutes. But I can also just keep going out. And the further you go out, the more square footage you're gonna get, the more it's gonna feel like, hey, I'm getting more bang for my buck. But I go out here to Yorktown Heights and I spend $500,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that was $4 million or $1 million or, $700K and is now $500K. Great. My price is going down, but the reason my price is going down is because I have fewer buyers who are willing to make that commute. It's all about where the jobs are, and the pros know that. Now, let's go back to Doug for a moment because he said something very interesting about customizations. Let's hit that, and then we've got some other important pro tips that he gives here, and we're going to highlight these by just replaying this segment right here.
7 years, when you come to terms mentally with the fact that it's only worth 1.6.
It was tough with him because I remember talking to him before he was building the house, and his mindset at the time was, I just want like a 20-car garage, but I can't just build that because they won't permit it. So I have to build the house for resale value so that...
Exactly. You have to build a house for resale value, but not just for resale value, but because of permitting. And when I hear home building and I hear permitting, you know what I regularly think of? I regularly think of how the first thing that home buyers always tell me when they want to buy a home, because I've spent a career spending time with first-time home buyers saying, oh, Kevin, I want to buy a home. Can you help us buy a home? You're a real estate broker. The first thing they always say is, I don't want a tract home. The tract homes, they don't have character. There's no character. I want character. Great. But you know what the tract homes have, and this is what the pros understand, that the noobs don't understand, is that the tract homes are building what the majority of people want, actually want today. Not what they think they want, but what they actually want today. And so you create a modern style tract home that most people want. You might be different. You might be like, no, man, I want the historic home. I want the 1920s Spanish style home. That's fine. But for practical purposes, most people don't want that 2-in-1 knob and tube 1920s 100-year-old home. And the pros know this. The pros know that most people, instead of that 2-in-1, want a functional home with a master bedroom, master bathroom, separate guest space, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-story home that they can grow a family in. Tract homes, even though they're hated, pros know have the best liquidity. They have the best speed of sale, best speed to rent, and the fewest customizations. Tract homes for a professional investor are considered hyper liquid because they are at the complete opposite end of unique and custom, because every customization you make reduces that hyper liquid nature. Now, Doug goes on to say something else here. He says he likes where the land is more valuable. We saw that. Graham makes the joke about California. And this is true in some parts. We know Graham doesn't like Santa Monica, rightfully so. And that's really a topic for a different video. But Doug mentioned something about historic established neighborhoods. And he actually hits on a professional tip that most noobs don't understand. Let's listen to that part again.
I have a structure that a family or someone else would want to buy. The thinking, I thought, was correct, but it's just...
It's snowballed a little. I have this severe belief, maybe militant, that you should live somewhere where your land is more valuable than the improvements you make to it.
It's a very California thing to say.
Yeah, it is. Or dense area to say,
sure.
Right? That's also true in nice neighborhoods in a lot of cities. I only ever buy old homes that are in kind of historic type neighborhoods that are very established long term. And I worry about the deep suburban living and massive house that is unsellable in the future kind of thing.
So this is a pro tip right here. So what he says is, and this is also a risk, by the way, of some tract homes. Notice I'm not saying new construction, but tract homes. Newer can work, but there's a risk with newer because it doesn't give you the benefit of something that Doug just said. See, brand new can come with this risk of crap. It's in an unestablished neighborhood. The pro knows that new construction is great after it's settled for a few years. See, in my opinion, one of the best homes that I could buy right now would be a home that's in like a 1990s or an early 2000s neighborhood, because I can drive that neighborhood and I can see what's going on. As a pro, I could look and see, all right, how many people are actually taking care of this neighborhood. You don't know that in new construction because it looks its absolute best day one and it decays from there. But what it settles down to, what resistance level for those stock buyers, right? What resistance are we hitting? What low point are we hitting? of quality in the neighborhood, that matters. And so there's a neighborhood not too far away from me that's actually a 1980s neighborhood that's known for having one of the best reputations for raising families, quality upkeep in the neighborhood. Anybody who doesn't upkeep their home kind of gets shunned in the neighborhood, so even the tenants upkeep their homes to keep up with it. And I compare that to another neighborhood that's actually 20 years newer, but people aren't upkeeping the neighborhood. And so anytime a new person moves in, they also kind of let their hands fall and they're like, what's the point? So Doug's point here on hitting on established is so key. Now that's where I though differ from him. He said the word historic. This is where I have a difference of opinion than Doug, and it's okay. I like newer tract homes, but that are not brand new, that are newer, where I could see that they're established, right? So I'll take an 80s, 90s, 2000s home. But historic is a red flag where I tend to operate. Because as soon as you get a historic designation, your ability to actually sometimes just maintain the building or rent it out really gets crimped by rules and regulations imposed by cities. For example, technically where I live, any home over 40 years old is called historic. And you have to go through historic planning commissions just to do stupid things like replace a broken window, to do it right at least. And that's crazy. But it also keeps a crimp on building, which increases resale values for the existing owners. As usual, it just screws new homeowners, but it benefits older homeowners. Anyway, then we got to get to the last financial bit of advice, which Doug suggested early in this segment, but I really want to highlight it here. And it goes to the car
What's going on with people leasing these cars these days? Is like a lease to own.
Yeah, because I guess if you're doing it for your channel and you own the biz, you can write off a significant amount of it.
Correct.
Or something. And I realized you could do this too late. I never once did it, and now I don't own the biz anymore, which is unfortunate. Yeah. So, but it's a big thing that I think all these guys are doing, and everybody's like, "Well, you don't own the car then." Well, the leases aren't set up. People think of it like a traditional car lease. Mm-hmm. It's not really like that. Like at the end, you have this. You've a lot of it has gone into equity. The car's not depreciating really. You could re-up the lease. People lease these cars sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This segment here is talking about an exotic cars, the ability to sort of almost lease to own some of these units where you can actually build equity in the car. But there's a bigger issue that comes up here, and it comes to when we talk about Stradman's monthly payment on a certain vehicle. Let's listen to that part.
Okay. But the drawback is these massive payments. I mean, so Stradman's making like $20,000 payments or whatever it is in this contract.
30.
That's not out of the norm, by the way, in that segment of the market. A lot of guys do that.
Yeah. Oh, Steve Hamilton. His payments were just through the roof. But for him, he was like, I financed these at low interest rates.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore, but on all the ones I got like 3 years ago, it makes sense to have these payments at 3%.
Yeah.
Even though they're high.
Think about what the cash, right? He would have lost out if he had put all that cash into those cards at the time, probably.
Yeah.
So it was the right call. It's an astronomical number to see, right, in your bank account coming out every month.
Right. I'm sure of the 30, I think he said his payment was like $33,000 a month. I'm sure of that, probably 31 goes towards equity.
Probably.
My guess. And then his balloon payment at the very end is going to be a small amount.
Right? Like at the end of the day, it's going towards the car that he owns, which is fine. But like, damn.
Damn is right. So this really depends. People hear, I can finance these cars and most of the money is going to go to equity. We've got to be careful of that. Today, a lot of these exotic car loans are run at 8 to 10% interest rates. Let's take the midpoint and go 9%. You get a $3 million exotic car at 9%. That's costing you in interest $270,000 a year. That's a really good salary, just in interest. And in that case, if your principal and interest payment is like $30,000 a month, $22,500 are going to interest every single month. That's money that's going poof, gone. Now, sure, you could argue, well, the interest is a business write-off, but monthly payments are what lead to bad financial decisions. Okay, so the noob initially goes, it's a business expense. That's what they want you to think, because the government wants you to spend your money. The worst rich person is a person who just sits on their money. They hate Warren Buffett. He's sitting up there in Billy. They love the rich person that blows it all. They don't care if you go bankrupt. Ultimately, you're supporting the economy. And those big payments are, damn. This is why, because I think we're in a sensitive state in this economy, I personally have paid off all of my debt and sold any kind of asset that had a loan on it because I don't want it. I think it's too risky. And so I think the pro should look and say, what can I do without burying myself in these insane monthly payments to where I have to work? Because as soon as you feel like you have to work for somebody else's salary to pay a staff member, 10 staff members, like Linus, I think he's got like 20, 30, 40, 50 people working for him. I love him and I love his channel, but I'm like, the poor guy's gotta crank content to pay those bills. Ouch. Payments lead to, in my opinion, poor financial decisions. And maybe that's a little Dave Ramsey, but I think the pro understands that if you wipe out payments, you can actually hyper-focus on what you want to do and what's going to be the best for your future, rather than be trapped by what's going to help me make this payment this month.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.